Every day they manipulate your life. How narcissists control you without you even noticing. Narcissists are not a monolith. Psychologists often differentiate between grandiose or malignant narcissists and vulnerable or covert narcissists, and understanding this distinction is crucial to decoding their behaviors. Grandiose narcissists rely on overt, aggressive manipulation tactics. They dominate, intimidate, and control in ways that are impossible to ignore. Covert narcissists, on the other hand, operate with a subtlety so refined it can slip under the radar, leaving their victims questioning whether they are even being manipulated. The clinical term vulnerable narcissism describes individuals who crave control and validation but do so through passive and psychologically insidious means. Miller et al., 2011. Today, we'll explore 7 subtle manipulation tactics commonly used by covert narcissists and the psychological reasoning behind them. 1. Passive-aggressive behaviors, the masked weapon. One of the covert narcissist's signature tactics is passive aggression, a psychological strategy used to express anger or resentment indirectly while maintaining a facade of politeness or cooperation. According to Dr. Les Carter, passive aggression allows the narcissist to punish or frustrate without taking responsibility, keeping the power dynamic firmly in their favor. You might notice delayed responses, subtle criticisms, or small sabotages, all executed in a way that preserves their innocent image. Psychologically, this creates cognitive dissonance for the victim. You feel the resentment, the subtle hostility, but the narcissist denies it, leaving you to question your own perception. Over time, this undermines self-confidence and erodes trust in your own judgment, making you more dependent on their approval while they remain untouched by accountability. 2. Playing the psychologist, conditional future faking. Covert narcissists often adopt the guise of a therapist or observer, positioning themselves above you by analyzing your flaws, motivations, and behavior in subtle, critical ways. As clinical psychologist Dr. Craig Malkin notes, this tactic feeds the narcissist's need for control by creating an imbalance where the victim feels perpetually flawed. You are made to believe that your mistakes and insecurities are the cause of their distance, dissatisfaction, or even subtle disdain. This tactic often manifests as conditional future faking. They promise a return to the blissful love-bombing stage if only you correct yourself, implying that the perfect relationship or future is contingent upon your self-improvement. Psychologists highlight that this is particularly insidious because it ties your self-worth directly to their approval. No matter how much you change, the goalposts shift, leaving you chasing an ideal that is inherently unattainable. Dr. Sam Vaknin, a prominent narcissism researcher, explains that this maintains a cycle of dependency and self-doubt, trapping victims in a psychological loop where they constantly attempt to please a partner whose satisfaction is never fully attainable. The covert narcissist gains control without ever overtly exerting force. The victim internalizes the manipulation as self-failure. The consequences of these tactics are profound. Victims often experience chronic self-doubt, anxiety, and a diminished sense of agency. Passive aggression creates an environment of uncertainty, while conditional future faking fosters relentless guilt and obsessive self-monitoring. According to Dr. Wendy Behoy, therapy strategies such as cognitive restructuring, boundary setting, and reality check exercises are essential tools for reclaiming autonomy. Recognizing that the narcissist's behavior is a reflection of their pathology, not a mirror of your inadequacy, is the first critical step towards psychological freedom. In essence, understanding the subtle strategies of covert narcissists allows victims to reclaim their perception of reality. Awareness dismantles the illusion, empowering you to set firm boundaries and detach emotionally. Where once manipulation dictated your decisions, insight and therapeutic intervention restore agency and confidence. 3. Guilt tripping and shaming, the invisible leash. Among covert narcissists, one of the most insidious tactics is the weaponization of guilt and shame. Psychologists describe this as a hallmark of manipulative behavior in vulnerable narcissists. Carter, 2019, Campbell and Miller, 2011. Unlike overt aggression, which is visible and confrontational, this type of manipulation is subtle, emotionally covert, and often leaves the victim questioning their own moral compass. Imagine this scenario. A narcissist asks for your help, and for legitimate reasons, you cannot comply. A typical person would accept your boundaries and move on. not the narcissist. Instead, they deploy a psychological arsenal designed to make you feel like a monumental failure. You might hear phrases like, "I've always been there for you. I just thought you could do this one thing for me." On the surface, it sounds reasonable, even caring. But beneath the words is a hidden avalanche of obligation and emotional coercion. Psychologists note that covert narcissists leverage your empathy and moral self-image as levers of control. Your desire to see yourself as a good, caring, and empathetic person becomes the very rope they use to bind you to their will. This tactic has profound psychological effects. According to Dr. Craig Malkin, a narcissism researcher, when victims are repeatedly subjected to guilt and shaming, it creates a form of learned compliance. Over time, you start to internalize the belief that your needs, preferences, or limitations are inherently wrong or insufficient. Your self-esteem erodes quietly but steadily. You begin to obsessively question, "Am I doing enough? Am I failing again?" This is classic narcissistic gaslighting combined with moral manipulation, a relentless strategy to keep you tethered emotionally. The narcissist escalates the manipulation in a predictable pattern. If gentle guilt fails to produce compliance, they shift to overt shaming. They amplify your perceived failures, exaggerate betrayals, and frame your boundaries as evidence of moral weakness or emotional insufficiency. Psychologists refer to this as moral emotional exploitation, where the narcissist weaponizes your values, ethics, and empathy against you. You are repeatedly pressured to prove your goodness by putting their needs above your own, always, at any cost. The cycle is exhausting. The more you give, the more they demand. Psychologists warn that this establishes a feedback loop where your desire to be a good, ethical, and empathetic person, the very traits that make you human, are hijacked as a leash for control. Carter, 2019. Victims become trapped in a relentless pattern of attempting to validate their worth, constantly trying to fix situations, appease the narcissist, or restore a sense of equilibrium, all while the narcissist continues to evade responsibility and accountability. Understanding the psychological mechanisms at play is critical for recovery. Experts like Dr. Wendy Behori emphasize the importance of boundary reinforcement and cognitive reframing. Recognize that guilt induced by a narcissist is manufactured. It is not a reflection of your moral failing. When you resist the urge to over-apologize or overcompensate, you begin reclaiming autonomy. Journaling your experiences, seeking validation from trusted sources. The narcissist's next tool is the illusion of care, strategic empathy. They mimic understanding, listening attentively, offering pseudo-support, and sometimes issuing apologies. But psychologists like Dr. Carol McBride note that these are rarely genuine. They are calculated maneuvers designed to maintain control, gather personal information, or reset the emotional dynamic in their favor. For example, you might vent about a rough day, and they nod, console, and appear empathetic. Later, however, they weaponize that same conversation during a conflict, citing your earlier story to prove your inadequacy. Their apologies operate similarly. They minimize their actions and deflect blame back onto you, ensuring you feel responsible for maintaining the relationship. This kind of manipulation leaves victims emotionally off balance, doubting their perception, and addicted to their narcissist's validation. Psychologists advise recognizing patterns rather than isolated acts. Track inconsistencies between words and actions. Real empathy aligns with action, not just rhetoric. Protecting yourself emotionally means learning to spot these performative moments for what they truly are. Number 5. Stonewalling. Stonewalling is a classic narcissistic weapon, a refusal to engage, a deliberate silence or emotional withdrawal. Clinical psychologists explain that this is both a form of control and emotional abuse. By ignoring you, giving one-word answers, or changing the subject, the narcissist exerts dominance while leaving you anxious and frustrated. Victims often begin stonewalling themselves as a defense mechanism, shutting down emotionally to survive repeated invalidation. Psychologist Dr. John Gottman, who studies marital conflict, notes that stonewalling triggers the body's fight-or-flight response in victims, causing chronic stress and emotional dysregulation. The narcissist, in contrast, thrives on this tension, viewing your emotional disorientation as a source of power. Boundaries and emotional self-care are crucial. Recognize stonewalling as a deliberate power tactic rather than a reflection of your worth. Engage external support, maintain personal routines, and avoid overinvesting emotionally when communication becomes weaponized. Number 6. Implied threats and subtle intimidation. Next is the insidious art of implied threats. Unlike overt aggression, covert narcissists wield subtlety, creating uncertainty and anxiety through vague statements or hypotheticals. Psychologists call this ambiguous abuse, which leaves the victim questioning reality while the narcissist maintains control. For instance, they might say, "You're lucky I'm still here. Not everyone would tolerate this," or "I could find someone better easily." These remarks exploit fear of loss and social comparison, making you doubt your value. Dr. Ramani explains that this tactic triggers chronic hypervigilance in victims, conditioning them to overcompensate to prevent perceived abandonment or rejection. The narcissist experiences a perverse satisfaction, feeding their need for dominance while avoiding direct conflict. Ground yourself in reality. Psychologists suggest affirmations, social support, and documenting incidents to counteract the fear-based manipulation. Knowing your worth and creating emotional boundaries shields you from the coercive power of implied threats. Number 7. Intermittent reinforcement, the emotional roller coaster. Intermittent reinforcement is perhaps the most psychologically potent weapon. Dr. B.F. Skinner's principles of behaviorism apply here. Unpredictable rewards and punishments hijack the brain's dopamine pathways. Initially, the narcissist showers you with affection, attention, and praise, the infamous love-bombing phase. Your brain associates their attention with emotional highs. Then, unpredictably, they withdraw affection, criticize, or ignore you, triggering emotional lows. Psychologists call this a form of behavioral conditioning. Victims become addicted to the narcissist's approval, chasing highs and fearing lows, which erode self-respect, self-esteem, and independence. The emotional roller coaster also ensures you stay invested in the relationship, even as reality becomes increasingly toxic. Understanding the neurobiology behind intermittent reinforcement is liberating. Psychologists recommend detaching emotionally and consciously breaking the cycle. Support groups, therapy, and self-reflection are critical tools to rewire emotional responses and reclaim autonomy. Number 8. Exploiting labor and emotional investment. Finally, narcissistic men are not just gold diggers. They are labor diggers, a fact often overlooked. Dr. Ramani Durvasula notes that these men exploit not only material resources but your time, energy, emotional labor, and even spiritual effort. Marriage or partnership with a narcissist often masquerades as love but functions as unpaid servitude. They dump invisible labor on you, then guilt-trip you when you request help. They manipulate your desire to be a good partner to maintain control. Psychologists explain that this dynamic often leaves victims trapped in chronic stress, burnout, and even trauma bonds. The narcissist benefits from the work while giving nothing back, reinforcing their inflated self-image and entitlement. Recognize that true partnership involves mutual effort, respect, and appreciation. Boundaries, delegation, and support networks are essential. Therapy and education about narcissistic patterns empower victims to reclaim their labor, time, and emotional energy. I hope today's session offered you more than just awareness. I hope it sparked reflection, illuminated patterns, and gave you tools to start reclaiming your emotional power. If any part of this resonated, I want you to take a moment to honor that recognition. Leave your thoughts in the comments so we can explore them together. Remember, healing is not a single act. It is a deliberate, ongoing process. Psychologists remind us that awareness alone is not enough. It must be paired with action, boundaries, and self-compassion. Take note of the triggers, reflect on the strategies that keep you stuck, and gently experiment with new ways of responding that protect your mind, heart, and energy. Until we meet again in the next episode, I encourage you to carry today's insights with intention. Let them guide your choices, inform your boundaries, and remind you that each step toward understanding, each moment of clarity, is a victory in itself. Let the healing begin, not as a distant goal, but as a practice woven into the rhythm of your everyday life.